He held a world championship for over 7 years, reigning alongside such legends as Joe Louis, Sugar Ray Robinson, and Rocky Graziano. He fought 10 different world champions in 3 different weight classes and engaged in one of the greatest light heavyweight championship fights in history. He would serve his country for 4 years in World War II, but the boxing world has largely forgotten the fighter they once called. Gus Lesnevich was born on February 22, 1915, in Cliffside Park, New Jersey, to Russian and Polish parents. His boyhood idol was champion boxer Kid McCoy, and when Lesnevich was given a pair of gloves as a gift, he decided to take up the sport at the age of 17. 2 years later, he would win the New York City Golden Gloves in the middleweight division. Lesnevich was so confident in his abilities that he once entered the office of the local newspaper and announced to reporters that he had a new punch that would revolutionize the sport. He would throw his left hand and give it a twist of the wrist right before it landed, a technique Lesnevich called the corkscrew, which he boasted would put all of his opponents to sleep. He would be managed by his longtime friend Joe Vella as he would turn pro in 1933. Gus was a natural right from the start, Vella said, and we were a natural. Unlike a lot of managers and fighters who are always fighting over something, he and I were buddies until the end. Lesnevich would be trained by Dal Dallings, a strict disciplinarian who felt that all of the fighters of the 1930s and 40s were soft because they would break training after a fight. Under Dallings, Lesnevich would train constantly, getting 10 hours of sleep a night and eating only sparingly. It would take only a year before Lesnevich would be fighting in main events at the Ridgewood Grove in Brooklyn. He would be given nicknames like the Russian Lion, the Hackensack Hacker, and the White Russian Warhammer. Lesnevich would compile a record of 23-1 on the East Coast before Vella would take him on a tour of California. Once there, Lesnevich would defeat the likes of Marty Simmons, Carmen Barth, and Ray Actus before facing middleweight champion Freddie Steele in a non-title bout. 4 months later, Lesnevich would be stopped on cuts by young Corbett III in 5 rounds. The 5'9" Lesnevich would then rise in weight to the light heavyweight division, defeating the likes of Johnny Romero, Alabama Kid, and Attilio Sabatino as he steadily ascended the rankings. He would go on a multi-fight tour of Australia, where he would drop a 15-round decision to Ron Richards, before defeating Bob Olin and the Alabama Kid in a rematch. In July of 1939, Lesnevich was brought in as an opponent for the heavily hyped Dave Clark, a stablemate of Joe Louis. Clark was 29-1, but Lesnevich would stun his opponent in the opening round and score a knockout in only 88 seconds. These victories would earn him a shot at light heavyweight champion Billy Conn, but the Pittsburgh Kid would be too fast for Lesnevich and earn a unanimous decision. Lesnevich would rematch Clark, defeat him by decision, and once again get a shot at Billy Conn. The rematch was closer than their first encounter, but once again Conn would win a decision. The good news for Lesnevich was that Conn was vacating the title to move up to the heavyweight division and challenge Joe Louis. Meanwhile, Lesnevich would outpoint top contender Anton Christoforidis over 15 rounds and later decision Tammy Mariello and win the vacant light heavyweight title. The newly crowned light heavyweight champion would lose decisions in non-title bouts against Jimmy Bivens and Bob Pastor before he enlisted in the Coast Guard. The war would keep Lesnevich from defending his title over 4 years. He would box in exhibitions in the Philippines, then later train servicemen alongside former heavyweight champion Jack Dempsey. Lesnevich felt that his time in the Coast Guard served him well for his boxing return, stating that he learned more telling others what to do in the ring for 4 years than he did as a competitor. He made the decision that he would now fight more as a slugger, disparaging the adage that punchers were born, not made. He would return to the ring in January of 1946, at 31 years old. Experts now believe that he was over the hill, and they referred to him as Old Man Gus in their news stories. Gus traveled to England where he would defend his belt against the local favorite, Freddie Mills. The fight would be considered one of the greatest bouts in the history of British boxing. Gus liked the British hospitality so much that 4 months later, he would rise in weight and meet local favorite Bruce Woodcock, who would knock him out in the 8th round. Gus was now considered past his prime when he defended his title against the undefeated Billy Fox, who at 37-0 was expected to give the 32-year-old Lesnevich a beating. Gus was hurt early in the bout, but was able to come back and stop Fox in the 10th, destroying the myth that Fox was the next big thing. 3 months later, Gus would go up against Emilio Bettina, who was on a win streak and headed for a heavyweight match against Joe Louis. Gus was once again the underdog, but he still had his punch, and he knocked out Bettina in 59 seconds, setting a record for the fastest knockout in a main event at Madison Square Garden. He would meet former rival Tammy Moriello again, decisioning him over 10 close rounds, then 3 months later administering a bad beating and stopping him in the 7th. The victories would prompt Ring magazine to award Gus as the Fighter of the Year. Lesnevich would face Fox again, and this time it would take less than 2 minutes to starch his foe. There was now talk of Lesnevich moving up in weight to challenge Joe Louis for the heavyweight title. "Gussie's as strong as a bull across the chest," his sparring partner Shelton Bell said. "Sheer mass of muscles. He can take it over the heart, and he likes to dish it out over the heart and inside. He's got a pretty solid Sunday punch. Might shake up a fellow like Joe Louis more than you think." Lesnevich would then return to England to defend his title in a rematch with Freddie Mills. But he was having trouble making the weight and seemed weak throughout. He would be knocked down twice in the 10th round, suffer cuts over both eyes, and lose the decision, his title, and the opportunity to face Joe Louis or Jersey Joe Walcott. But Lesnevich had earned over $250,000 for the 2 fights with Mills, a nice little fortune as he was almost broke when he came out of the service a little less than a year later, and still struggling to make the 175-pound weight limit. He would be matched with Joey Maxim to fight for the vacant NBA light heavyweight title. Lesnevich started well, but faded late and was outpointed by Maxim. Lesnevich's final hurrah would take place on August 10, 1949, when he would challenge Ezzard Charles for the heavyweight title at Yankee Stadium. The Evening Herald now described Lesnevich as old and biscuit-faced. Lesnevich tried, but Charles would cut both of his eyes before the bout was mercifully stopped by Lesnevich's corner at the end of the 7th round. "He's through," Joe Vela said to reporters, his voice shaking. "Better he should quit while he's got all of his marbles." Lesnevich wanted a few days to think about it, but his manager refused. 17 years, Vela said. That's enough. Realizing that his clock had run out, Lesnevich remained in the sport as a referee before finding work as a public relations representative for a trucking company. "With a better education, I might have become a big-time politician," Lesnevich said. "I like people and they seem to like me." In 1954, Lesnevich would be deserted by his wife and granted a divorce. He would retain custody of his 4 children, 2 sons and twin daughters. 6 months later, he would remarry. In 1964, Lesnevich would be taken by his wife to his doctor's office when he complained of stomach and chest pains. He would die minutes after his arrival. "I didn't even have a chance to examine him," his doctor said. Lesnevich was 49 years old. "He always came to fight," a reporter for the Morning Call wrote. Gus was a battler.